I just wanted you know that in the Career Huddles we do interview best-selling authors, or every single month. I mentioned that before, and I actually do read the book. And I have to say, I had to read this book because there's no audio version that I could find yet.
It's coming.
I know, and I'm so, but thank you. And I did. So first of all, thank you both for being here. Snowflake is like in its own category of success, maybe with the possible exception of lovable, which we'll be talking about in a little bit, in terms of the speed at which you grew and actually doing the 3 times 3 times 3 times 2 times 2 thing. Kind of incredible. So congrats on your book. I have a lot of questions, and we're going to get into this now. So one of my favorite parts of the very beginning, it's not the very beginning, but when you get to Denise, you'll have your interview. And I think she says, some people, when you ask, so what are you like? And Denise said, some people think I'm an ice princess. And I thought, what went through your head when she said that at a moment? Because that's probably not come up in an interview before.
Yeah, so in interviews, I stole this from someone else, but in interviews, a lot of times I'm looking for someone's self-awareness, like, are they self-aware? And I ask the question, what's the biggest misperception of you? And then Denise, like you just asked, I've known Denise for so long now, but she's very stoic and very serious looking and very Swedish, and so I'm looking at her and she looks at me very seriously and says, after I asked that question, she says, "Ice Queen."
Ice Queen.
And I'm
like,
I had it wrong.
Yeah.
And then she goes, "But I'm really funny, haha." Turns out she's pretty funny. So, yeah.
That's a funny story. And so what gave you the self-possession? Here you are interviewing at this startup to just say, yeah, I'm an ice queen, or that's what people think. But, that's a bold moment.
No, I mean, it was again, I think ice queen was more, I'm from Sweden. We have we have a reserved style. Right? We don't show our emotion. We're not like the Southern Europeans, right? Showing all your emotions.
We're not going to hug it out when we're done?
No, we're always, you keep your arms length all the
fine.
time. It's very uncomfortable if
right.
anyone gets closer.
All right, no hugs,
and
note to self.
I think for, again, some people meeting Scandinavians for the first time might be a little bit sort of, why is this person so reserved? So that's where it came from.
Okay.
But we are quite funny and friendly, after a few vodkas or glasses of wine, or
There's humor somewhere.
Yes, there's humor somewhere.
Fine.
Yes.
No, and I love the accent. I think I could listen to it all day. I want to, in the book, this quote is really stuck out at me. Marketing exists to serve sales, unquote. Some CMOs might push back on that. How did you make that philosophy powerful and not limiting?
And I think it might sound a little bit, provocative, perhaps. It's not like I'm serving coffee to Chris, right, on a daily basis. I don't think I've ever done that.
No hugs, no coffee.
Yes,
okay.
And also
right.
think a little bit depends on the industry and the company you're in. But the distribution, right, of Snowflake is through the sales organization, right? We're selling infrastructure deals, $5 million, $10 million, $100 million, $250 million deals, even, right? Again, our customers buy through the sales organization, and therefore our role is to really make the sales machine, very effective, right? And I think other companies where marketing maybe owns the entire buyer's journey, right? If you're in the PLG type of space, or where someone goes and buys something off your website, it's probably different, right? Marketing owns the whole, journey. But again, at Snowflake, sales owns a big part of the journey. It's a huge investment too. These are very expensive sales rep as well, right, in infrastructure space. And we need to, it's about really making the sales machines super effective.
Yeah, I would just add, like, maybe that is a misperception that people take away, like Denise, quote unquote, serve sales. The thing that Denise was hyper-focused on for us was driving revenue. Like, because that was the thing that mattered, revenue growth. And so, when she walked in day one, I had some challenges with the previous, marketing team, and I was debating like what the definition of like an MQL was and stuff like that. And Denise was like, "Hey, dude, we're not going to talk about MQLs anymore. We're going to talk about qualified meetings for your sales team. And then to take it a step further, to Denise's credit, and this is where, sometimes I have a misperception around, big company people. Denise had been a successful CMO at a publicly traded company, and she came in and sat down with every single one of the BDRs that were working for me, every one of our sales reps that were working for me, every one of our sales managers, to find out how the leads were and tell me what was good, what was bad. And so I think that my favorite part of that early journey was Denise not just saying like, oh, we're going to do. You talk about qualified meetings. She went in and figured out exactly how she was going to get our team qualified meetings.
All right,
And again, qualified meetings turn into pipeline, right?
That's
In
right.
the early days, kind of meetings was the key thing at that time.
That's right.
And I think also that serving sales, I think it's also a mindset that we need to instill in the marketing organization, as well, right? So also the marketing organization understand kind of, we're working as, one team here.
Okay, so to recap, no hugs, no coffee, no MQLs.
Yeah.
Just to make sure I'm on the same page.
Qualified.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
My daughters would say faxio.
Yeah, okay. So, but there is a word. So first of all, you guys worked together for 9 years. How many of you in this room have actually worked with a CRO, or if you're a CMO, have worked with a CRO for 9 years in your career? Okay, so, that's a little thing in itself. And I want to know, and the one word that you will take away from the book is alignment. And I just talk about what that looks like day to day. I mean, we already heard that Denise meeting with everybody, but you guys have different jobs and you have different, functions to serve in the company. How did you get so aligned and stay so aligned for so long?
Well, I think Denise, very much, had in her mind, hey, she wanted to drive revenue, and then from that, she would sit in on my forecast calls. She would sit in my pipeline reviews. She would sit in my quarterly business reviews. She would then assign out, field marketers to each one of my second line managers, and come up with plans to drive revenue in the region. And so we just had this unified approach of we're going to go crush it. And at the same time, Denise would also hold me accountable, and vice versa. If there were things that my organization was doing, people that were bad, she would come to me and say hey, this person's not working out. And there are people that I have fired from Snowflake because she told me they're not working out. Now I don't immediately do that. I do my investigation, but same on my behalf. There are people that she hired where we're you kind of almost know instantly, hey, there's a problem. And so I'd say that alignment was there. And the other thing, kind of one of my favorite traits of Denise is her sense of urgency. There is no hey, yeah, I'll get to it in 3 weeks. They're let's do it right now. She'll we'll be in a one-on-one, and she'll call the person responsible for whatever and say hey, we're going to do this right now. And for example, during COVID, we transitioned the BDR team that had always worked for me over to Denise. And that transition it was let's not just do it yet, in a month or two, let's do it right now. And we kind of do stuff like that. And so I love her sense of urgency.
So Denise, if you're sitting in all these meetings that are all sales, the only thing I can think of is you don't sleep. Because, if you're doing all the sales meetings and you're doing the marketing meetings and you're doing executive meetings, so you're juggling a lot. How do you manage your time?
But now I make sure that the rest of my leaders are in those meetings. Right? It's very much that, do we have it covered, right?
Okay.
I need to be in Chris meetings, his direct report meetings. My leaders need to be in his leaders and their direct reports. We very much map out, right? We mapped out every single leader, who is the marketer, who is really the one point, of ownership, for this leader, right? And you are representing the entire marketing organization with this, person. If something breaks with marketing this team, it's your fault essentially. So, and I think sometimes, we can have a great alignment, but it can break somewhere in the organization. I think we both has been fighting for making sure that we had that alignment everywhere in the organization, and all, around the world as well. And it was about taking some people, out. And Chris would come and say to me as well, Denise, hey, I'm hearing these things. take a look. I took a look, and we had to take people out. And it was also right when I got that feedback. I think the important thing is not to be, and I have been in the past. It's so easy to be defensive when you get feedback, and Chris was never also defensive. When I told him something, he would really listen, do his investigation, take action. But if I would give him feedback and he wouldn't do anything, I would never give him any feedback again. And I think having someone you trust, right, at the leadership level, who will give you that advice, right, I think that's so incredibly important. But if you have someone giving you advice and you don't take action afterwards, you lost that trust, you're not going to get it again. So I think I remind myself about that every day when you get feedback, right? Sometimes you just want to defend yourself so badly, but you take a moment, listen,
breathe. And
if it's breathe again. If it's completely unfair, maybe then go back the day after or whatever, right? But really take it in at least at first as a gift of advice.
Feedback is a gift. I think you had 3 different CEOs during your course of, am I doing that count?
Oh, yeah, 4, right?
Technically
Yeah.
4.
Yeah.
4 okay. So again, how many of you have stayed in seat with a rotation of 2 CEOs? Like usually 3 CEOs. Raise your hand if you survived 3 CEOs. Okay, raise your hand if you survived 4. Okay, well these 2 did. And I'm wondering if part of it was that you were in such lockstep that it was like, okay, they're a team. We can't, we may want a new CEO or a CRO, but we are going to have to, how was that a bulk work? Because you were so connected at the hip that each CEO said, oh, I guess they're
I
just
think
a team.
I think in a way they felt that this is working well. They didn't want to to touch it
Right.
immediately.
Okay.
And I think I also have to thank Chris for especially surviving Frank Slutman. I think we never thought. It was 6 months where we thought we were going to fire every single day. Everyone else got fired around us, right? We're the only ones who did not. Actually, our head of product survived too.
Yeah.
Everyone else got fired. I read in the news Frank Slutman is bringing in his former CMO at Snowflake. We're like, what the heck?
And CRO.
Yeah,
and
and
CRO.
CRO. I was like, what the heck? It's such my job they're talking about
yeah.
here. And I think it was until the Christmas 7 months later, then we got a stock
Same email.
Yeah, we got a stock option
Yeah,
grant.
Merry
We're
Christmas.
Like,
Here's
Merry Christmas.
Life-changing amounts of stock.
We had never heard any kind of nice
there was-
words
yeah.
ever, right, for 7 months. And then we got some.
It sounds like you were pretty happy when that switched and you got somewhere.
I think I have a good story about that. Is so when Slutman came in, it was shock. It was like I remember getting a text from one of our board members at 3 a.m. saying call me when you get up, and of course I saw it at 3 a.m. and I couldn't sleep.
Love that.
Not great. Okay, so called them and said you have a new boss, and you have a one-on-one with him in 2 days. Okay, great. And I knew of Frank. I had been at EMC when EMC bought Data Domain, but I never, met him. And I'd heard, some things about him that he was pretty tough. And I go into my one-on-one with Frank, and in the one-on-one, he's like, I just said, look, I said, I got 2 things for you, Frank. I said, number 1, I said, I have this huge, we had a $100 million deal, and Bob was in the middle of it, and I need your help. And I said, number 2, we have the best marketing department in the planet. Don't mess with it. And he's like, wow, you're the first person to come in, first peer of you, first person on the executive team that hasn't come in here and talk shit about your other peers. And I got nothing bad to say. And now there were people I didn't like, but I wasn't going to do that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I was getting fired, so I had nothing to lose.
Right. But if they take me, don't take Denise, which is nice. But just the gesture of that and the fact that you two were so combined in driving successful. And I guess one little thing that it's not such a little thing, but your positioning changed kind of with each CEO a little bit. It wasn't just that you needed to change. And there was a moment, I feel like, your CEO came in and said, yeah, it's not a cloud data. You wanted to be a platform for a minute. And then he just said data cloud or something like that.
Oh, that was Frank. Yeah.
And so talk a little bit about that, the evolution of the positioning, just the managing of that as you had this exponential growth.
Yeah, and also Frank is a really good marketer and salesperson and understands positioning really, really well. I mean, he was always talking about the Al Rees positioning book as well. But that positioning, it was very much kind of the market that pulled us in that direction. And of course, expansion of the platform. And Snowflake was essentially built to be a data cloud for the beginning. But when you're coming out, zero revenue, startup named Snowflake, and you're trying, hey, we're a data cloud, it's like, I mean, no credibility at all,
It's
right?
vague.
Yeah,
And
it's
it was
vague,
vague.
right?
Yeah,
Vague.
it was vague.
That would have been too big positioning in the early days.
Yes.
But we were essentially a data cloud, and the product evolved and truly really became sort of a cross-cloud data cloud. So it was very authentic positioning. It became so obvious, actually. And customers were actually even referring to us as a data cloud.
I think it was hard though, because like when Denise started, I mean, we were $3 million in revenue, and our North Star was to be the cloud data warehouse. And turns out we were hyper successful in becoming the cloud data warehouse. In fact, we were so successful at it that our competitors started to then try to pigeonhole us into being the cloud data warehouse. And so Frank recognized that and worked with Denise, and then we had to, kind of say we're more than that. And that was a hard pivot, I think, because people still want it, and our competitors were like, yeah, just leave them over there. Like, like Databricks did a really good job of saying, like, hey, leave these guys over here. Microsoft's same thing. So we had to overcome some of those challenges.
It's a fascinating thing, but I will marvel at, you could have been much more complicated. You could have and talk about the power for you as a salesperson to have something as simple as either of those positionings, and how that enabled your team to sort of do the impossible, which is to sell against some really big competitors and land some big accounts and get going.
I mean, first of all, the luck that I had is unbelievable in terms of how great the product was. I mean, the product is just this world-class product, and people like to say, hey, look, I picked the right company. I got super lucky in picking Snowflake, and so I think that's my attitude to this day. And I think most of the salespeople that joined the team early, they also recognize, like, really it was the puppy dog sale. We were like people didn't know who Snowflake was. They didn't like our name at all. They tried to change our business model multiple times because they didn't like consumption. Procurement people hated consumption, so we had to educate them on how to buy. And so we were just trying to get people to try the product. And that was like everything we drove. And then we launched self-service because we didn't have self-service. And the self-service was effectively, we called the hamster team. And the hamster team was like, hey, you'd get a request for self-service and you'd have an account in 4 hours. And that meant someone was waking up and issuing an account. And then Denise and the marketing team spent all their energy driving a bunch of leads to the on-demand website to get these trials going. So that was really how we kind of sold. I never went in and said we should be your cloud enterprise data warehouse. I always said, don't believe anything I say, try the product. And here's all the things, and I knew all the things that we would solve, all the pain points that we would solve, and I'd focus my energy on that. And then, Denise would then, take that and take those customer success stories and then just figure out ways to get those success stories in front of customers. From field marketing events to we did, the Data Cloud World Tour, we do the Data for Breakfast, we would do, one of the things that my sales team loved the most about the marketing team was the account-based marketing platform that they built. And it was all based on taking case studies and putting them in front of prospects. And that was like world class. And that was like one of the things that blew away every single seller that we had.
So talk about, and another thing that I thought was interesting, and it's very different than the story you'll hear about Lovable later today, is you were extremely focused initially on certain verticals and certain applications, and you sort of grew, and you had an advisor who was sort of helping you do that. Denise, talk a little bit about ABM and the advice that you would give to this group if you were sort of looking back at some of those earlier days about the ABM programs that you did.
Again, I mean, the sales team moved to a named account strategy, and we, again, coming back to that alignment, okay, we need to align with that. And that's, of course, ABM is what aligns with named accounts. So this was probably back in 2017, something like that. And we invested heavily in ABM, and we invested heavily in getting our customers to do the job for us, right? How can we get customers to talk about Snowflake all day long and nothing else, essentially? So the whole brand was built by customers speaking about us. But ABM, again, it was all about just aligning with that named account strategy. We went in, did all the contact discovery within those accounts, made sure that we created, of course, the engagement, and then, again, became, of course, a lot easier for a seller had 50 accounts, right? They had no idea where to start. So that became more about it's about how to make the selling easier, essentially.
And that worked really well. I think, like, one of the things, like, I advise a bunch of startups now, and, you know, a lot of these sales reps want like these giant territories, and I think one of the things that we did is say that's not working, and we focused, you know, we reduced the territories down to, you know, 50 to 100 accounts, and then Denise recognized that really some of the best leads that we would get were leads that were sales rep generated leads, and so that putting that ABM, you know, tools in place was really key to us driving a bunch of leads that were sales rep generated.
So you went from 0 to billions, from a startup to a public company, right?
Correct. Yes.
And we've got a group of CMOs here, and I'm wondering, because to wrap up, one thing every CMO in this room could do next week to get one step closer to the alignment that you built. And Denise, why don't you start?
I think you need to have really also empathy for sales and make sure that your entire market organization has that empathy. And I also hired from the sales team. Chris always say, like, oh, you took my best sales rep.
Facts.
She runs North America field marketing today, started as an SDR with the company. So I always infused sales experience and people understood the craft of sales into the team. Because sales is hard. Carrying that bag every day, a number on your head, you get fired if you don't meet your numbers. Nobody else in the company gets fired in one quarter, right, if they don't deliver your number. So having that empathy, I think, is important. I think when I started in marketing in '96, right, there was no way to measure anything on marketing. The only measurement I had was the feedback I got from the salespeople, right?
Yeah.
I literally handed over leads on a floppy disk, right, and walked over to that's what I did. Excel, floppy disk over to the sales team. And then I don't know what happened. So I relied on that tight relationship to get the feedback, right, what's going on.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Okay.
That was a long answer.
One word, some simple, clear advice for the CMOs here to build a 9-year relationship that can withstand 4 CEOs. You have 30 seconds. Go.
Stop pointing at the scoreboard. And Denise did that well. Like, the thing that would drive me crazy is marketers that get up there and say, here's how many MQLs we've gotten, and the sales team sucks. Like, that's like the worst. And then it creates this like awful relationship. Denise would then, privately, she would say, like, here's the funnel, here's what we're getting, but she would help me diagnose where we were breaking. And so there was never a public feud between her and I and our CEO. It was always resolved behind closed doors between her and I, and there was never a bragging. If we were missing the number, there was no like, well, we did our job. That didn't happen. And so I think it's really important to have alignment with sales. If you throw your sales peer under the bus to your CEO, you're done. It's over.
You're toast. You guys are amazing. I love the book. I strongly encourage you all to read it. If you didn't get your signed copy, try to grab them in the next 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was really a pleasure. You guys are awesome.